When you look at the towering brick walls of Hampton Court Palace, it's easy to picture the ruthless king who ruled there. But in 1509, a 17-year-old Henry took the throne of England to national rejoicing. He was tall, athletic, fluent in multiple languages, and a skilled musician. He was never supposed to be the king. This portrait shows a boy destined for the church or the background of the royal court. His older brother Arthur was the heir, but when Arthur died suddenly at 15, young Henry was thrust onto a very shaky throne. To understand Henry's reign, you have to understand the terror of the time. England had recently crawled out of the Wars of the Roses, a brutal civil war that decimated the country. Everyone knew that without a strong, legitimate male heir, the fragile Tudor dynasty could collapse back into total chaos. Henry was operating out of a sense of dynastic survival. Every decision for the next 30 years, every marriage, every execution, and every diplomatic shift stemmed from a singular, panicked need to secure the succession through a son. His strategy started logically enough. Henry married Catherine of Aragon, his brother's widow. She was a Spanish princess, bringing immense political connections. Because church law strictly forbade marrying a brother's widow, Henry had to secure a papal dispensation, a formal exception from the Pope, based on Catherine's sworn oath that her first marriage was never consummated. For the first 15 years, it worked beautifully. Catherine was brilliant, politically astute, and fiercely capable. When Henry went to war in France, she stayed behind as regent, and when Scotland invaded in his absence, Catherine's forces crushed them, sending Henry the bloodied coat of the Scottish king as a victory trophy. But looking at the biological record of their marriage reveals a tragedy. Catherine became pregnant at least 6 times. One by one, those pregnancies ended in miscarriages, stillbirths, or infant sons who survived only days. Out of 6 attempts, only a single child lived, a daughter named Mary. In Henry's mind, a daughter wasn't enough. By the 1520s, Catherine was past childbearing age by Tudor standards. Henry grew desperate. He began scouring the Bible and convinced himself that God was punishing him for marrying his brother's widow. The political panic morphed into religious zeal, and he needed a way out. His eye fell on Anne Boleyn. She was sophisticated, sharp-witted, and demanded a wedding ring. To give her one, Henry took a sledgehammer to European politics. He spent years fighting the Vatican, and when the Pope refused to annul his marriage, Henry broke England away from the Catholic Church entirely. He declared himself the supreme head of a new Church of England, nullified his first marriage, and made Anne his queen. He risked his entire kingdom for her. Then she gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth. Following a series of miscarriages, Henry's affection curdled into deadly resentment. His ministers rapidly compiled a monstrous case against Anne, accusing her of adultery and treason. The charges were physically impossible to align with timelines, but truth didn't matter. Within 3 years of her coronation, Anne was beheaded. Henry already had a replacement lined up. James Seymour was pale, soft-spoken, and carefully submissive, the exact opposite of Anne's fiery intellect. She had watched 2 queens fall and played her hand with extreme caution, marrying Henry a mere 11 days after Anne's execution. Finally, Jane achieved the one goal Henry demanded. In October 1537, she gave birth to a legitimate son, Prince Edward. The court erupted in celebration. The victory was entirely hollow. She contracted a postpartum infection and died 12 days later. Henry buried Jane with full honors, possessing the male heir he'd broken the church to get. But the path he took to reach Edward, divorcing one queen and beheading another, had established a new, cold reality in England. Survival at court now depended entirely on biological success. As he entered his later years, the athletic Golden Prince of 1509 vanished entirely. Henry became deeply paranoid, volatile, and temperamental. He was plagued by an ulcerated leg wound that left him in constant agony. You can see the physical toll in his armor from this period. Consuming huge banquets, his waistline expanded to over 50 inches. He was transforming into a genuine tyrant, both in body and in action. Looking for a powerful political alliance, he agreed to marry a German princess sight unseen based entirely on a portrait. When Anne of Cleves arrived, Henry found her physically repulsive. He refused to consummate the marriage. Showing remarkable intelligence, Anne looked at the fates of his previous wives and agreed to an annulment, securing a massive financial settlement and keeping her head. Desperate to recapture his youth, Henry immediately turned to Anne Boleyn's cousin, Catherine Howard. She was around 17 years old, vivacious and pretty. Out of her depth, he showered her with jewels, calling her his rose without a thorn. But Catherine was a child trapped in a marriage to a volatile monster. She made the fatal mistake of having an affair with a courtier. When Henry found out, his humiliation turned to pure rage. She was taken to the Tower of London and executed before she was 20. By 1543, the aging king's terrible physical condition entirely dictated his choice of bride. He chose Catherine Parr, a twice-widowed intellectual. She was fully prepared to manage his worsening medical needs and elegantly navigate the dangerous theological debates of his final years. While managing his volatile moods, she achieved something vital. She convinced Henry to legally restore his discarded daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, to the line of succession. It seemed like a minor act of family reconciliation at the time, but it set up the concluding chapter of the Tudor era. Henry VIII died at age 55, largely immobile and hoisting himself with machinery. He went to his grave completely convinced that his brutal methods had worked. He had his son, his absolute power, and his secure dynasty. But history doesn't follow royal decrees. Edward VI, the boy Henry sacrificed everything to produce, was sickly. He ruled for just 6 years and died at 15 without an heir, extinguishing the Tudor male line instantly. The crown fell to the daughter of Catherine of Aragon. Mary took the throne, ruling for 5 incredibly bloody years as she tried and failed to forcibly restore Catholicism to England. And then came the ultimate victor, Elizabeth, the daughter of the executed Anne Boleyn, the child Henry cast aside as illegitimate and worthless. She ascended the throne as Elizabeth I and ruled for 45 years, defeating the Spanish Armada and presiding over England's Golden Age. The massive effort Henry expended to ensure a male succession ultimately failed. While he spent his life dismissing and disinheriting his daughters, it was Elizabeth who would define the Tudor legacy, ruling for 45 years and transforming England into a global power.